The number you have dialed has been changed. The new number is...
Hi guys, I'm Lex.
And I'm Liv.
And today,
We'll be the judges.
I did it right.
We have a special guest with us
For the beginning.
for the beginning. Brayden, come here, say hi.
Hello.
Okay. What pissed you off this week?
Well, it's been approximately 24 hours since we've done this.
Yeah.
So,
This is day 2 in a row.
and we have to do...
Another one later today.
Because she's decided to go to Disney.
Hey, I didn't decide.
And then it's my birthday.
Yeah, and then it's your
So,
birthday weekend, so we're just
We're
getting
racking
them out now.
We're racking them up.
Brayden, what made you mad this week? What was your favorite part?
Getting my low taper fade.
Brayden got a low taper fade yesterday.
He thinks he's the cool kid now.
He is the cool kid now. Look at him.
Nothing specific. The video that we filmed yesterday, we have 4.5 hours of footage.
I know.
So figuring out, editing all of that, because I need a video by Wednesday. So I don't know, this might go out before it.
This might be
Because-
going out.
This might go out before it. Because I'm going to have to do it in multiple parts.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to edit all 4.5 hours and then figure out where to cut it.
And where to, separate the two.
So it's
I like the
probably going to
ending.
be 3 parts. 3 or 4 parts. Because 4 hours is a long time. It'll probably get down to 3.5.
But for
So I-
that one person to sit and watch.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I mean.
For 3.5 hours.
It'll
is
probably
crazy.
be down to 3.5 hours, so I'll probably do 3 episodes of somehow getting it. But that's gonna be fun. But I need an episode by Wednesday, and it is Sunday, so one of the
With school.
and one of these either that we do today.
I think we
hopefully,
should do this one today. And post it Wednesday.
and then
And do
work on that
Wednesdays
one.
next week.
Yeah, because
What do
it's
you
gonna
think?
have to be a bunch of
You
parts.
do agree?
It'll also be our bonus episode of the month.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have basically 2 bonus episodes probably.
Basically, probably.
So.
Unless one bonus episode is really long.
So, yeah. That's it. Anything for you?
No.
Your Sweet 16 list?
Yeah. I lost my list. With everybody I wanted to invite.
I told her if she can't remember them off the top of her head, then they're not important enough to go.
No, well, I could remember the people. It was just more of, the fact that I wanted to check them off.
Oh, okay.
And, cross them off. Because I remember who I know who I want and who I don't want.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, even
If
some
you
people...
haven't had a conversation, if you don't have a weekly conversation, a genuine conversation with them, at least once a week, don't invite them.
Well, I invited a few people that I don't have a week conversation with, but that's just because, I'm closer friends with them. I just don't hang out with them or see them all the time. Brayden's invited, I guess. Brayden, would you come to my party?
Sure.
Fire. I have to actually send it to your mom.
I'm going to dress you up like Pinocchio.
Yeah, you're going to be Pinocchio, okay?
It's
You want to know what my theme is? Yes. Close. What movie? No. He's in the movie, though.
Shrek or my pronounce
Shrek.
Shrek.
Pinocchio is not in Shrek.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
is.
he is.
Yes,
Yeah,
he
it
is.
It's all the fables.
Oh, yeah.
She'd know. Come on now.
Would you rather be Pinocchio or Donkey?
None.
What about the big
I'd
bad
be
wolf?
Or.
Who's Or?
Or.
Who's Or?
You said
Oh.
Pinocchio or Donkey.
Okay.
Hold on, I want to see if this works. I'm making me some waffles.
But yeah,
That's it.
that's it. I just was because I had everybody written down, so I knew who I wanted to invite. I just wanted to check them off on the list and make sure, but I ended up just writing a note, but it's on my iPad. So
Well, if it's in your iCloud, it should be. If you put it on just your iPad, it's only going to be in your iPad. If you put it in your iCloud, it's going to be.
I think it's just on my. All right. Today we're doing Wayne Gacy. Now, this guy was insane. Insane. So, John Wayne Gacy was born on March 17th, 1942. He was an American serial killer and sex offender who raped and tortured and murdered at least 33 young men and boys in Norwood Park Township near Chicago, Illinois. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public performance as a clown prior to the discoveries of his crimes. So he'd go to kids' birthdays and pretend to be a clown.
But wasn't he a really nice guy? Like, he was, like, well-known, well-respected.
Very involved in the township, did a lot for people, which most of the time that's how they are.
Yeah.
They do a lot for people, and they do a bunch of nice things. They're perceived as a nice person.
Well, have you seen that one corrections officer on TikTok?
No.
She said that, so, like, the females, it's hard when you're in a prison. Like, females aren't, like, can't really go everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But
The sex offenders are the nicest.
Yeah, she said the sex offenders were the nicest people. Who, yes, ma'am. Can you do this when you have a chance? Like, the nicest people there.
They know how to play it. So, Gacy committed all of his known murders inside of his ranch-style home. Typically, he would lure his victims in to his home and dope them.
Pretty much putting on handcuffs.
Into putting on handcuffs, the fudge. And pretext of demonstrating a magic trick. So he'd tell them he was performing a magic trick and end up handcuffing them, and then he would rape and torture his captives before killing his victims by either I was trying to figure this out when I was reading this earlier. Asphyxiation? Like a drug.
No. You can click on it.
I did.
It's when you, like...
It's an oxygen, the thing.
Suffocating.
Yeah, you basically...
Yeah, it's suffocation.
I don't know why they put such funk words.
Oh, yeah.
Or strangulation with, garrote, which is what was kind of used in the Jean Bonnet case.
Like a rope?
No. It's like with the broken paintbrush. And then you twist the paintbrush and it gets tighter and tighter and tighter.
What?
Never mind. If you know what it is, you know what it is. If you don't, and you want to know what it is, Google it. 26 victims were buried in his crawl space of his home, and 3 were buried elsewhere on his property, and 4 were discarded in the Des Plaines River, which I'm assuming is around him. Gacy had previously been convicted in 1968 of sodomy of a teenage boy in Waterloo, Iowa, and sentenced to 10 years in imprisonment. So he was in prison, but served 8 months. He murdered his first victim in 1972 and had murdered twice more till the end of 1975, and murdered at least 30 victims after his divorce from his second wife, which I'll tell you more about, in 1976. The investigation into the disappearance of the Des Plaines teenager, Robert Pest, led to Gacy's arrest in December 21st, 1978.
So this was over only 6 years he killed all that.
So in 6 years, he murdered and raped about 33 people, give or take a few. His conviction to 33 murders by one individual then covered the most homicides in the United States legal history. Gacy was sentenced to death on March 13th, 1980, and he was executed by the lethal injection at the Stateville Correctional Center on May 10th. So, his childhood, he was born in Illinois, obviously on March 17th. He was the second of 3 children and the only son of John Stanley Gacy, his father, and Marilyn Elaine Robinson, his mother. His father was an auto repair mechanic and World War I veteran, and his mother was a homemaker. Gacy was of Polish and Danish
ancestry.
Yeah, ancestry, and his family was Catholic. Gacy was close to his mother and his two sisters, but had a very difficult relationship with his alcoholic father, who was verbally and physically abusive to the family. The elder Gacy, his father, frequently belittled his son, calling him dumb and stupid, and compared him to his unfavorably with his sisters. One of Gacy's earliest childhood memories was his father beating him at the age of 4 and accidentally disarranging car engine equipment, basically. So he just moved around some equipment and his dad beat him. Gacy was an overweight and unathletic child. Because of a heart condition, he was told to avoid sports. In 4th grade, Gacy began experience blackouts. He would be hospitalized and occasionally because of these episodes, and also in 1957 for a burst of the appendix. Gacy later estimated that between the age of 14 and 18, he spent most of the year in a hospital. He was missing obviously a lot of school, and Gacy's medical condition was very conclusively diagnosed. His father,
it was never like they never figured out what it was.
Yeah. His father accused his son of faking as he lay in the hospital bed for most of his life. At the age of 18, Gacy became involved in politics, working as an assistant, a committee officer for a local Democratic Party. He worked in Las Vegas ambulance service for being transferred to Palmatory, and he was assistant for about 3 months. So he was a mortician's assistant.
So he watched them
go over the body and make out what the body was or who it was. He clambered into a coffin of a teenage male, embracing and caressing the body before experiencing a sense of shock. This experience promoted Gacy to return home.
Wait, what?
So he opened a coffin of a teenage male
And just laid with him?
Basically, and caressed his body, and then he felt shock and needed to go home. And
what in your right mind possesses you to go lay in a coffin with somebody who's in it?
Crazy people. Gacy enrolled in the Northwestern Business College despite having failed to complete high school due to his medical.
How did he get into college if he didn't?
I don't know. He graduated in 1963 and took management trainee position with the Nunn-Bush Shoe Company. He worked as a salesman, and then he was a department manager. That's basically it. Then he was a KFC manager. Gacy and Myers married, and so him and his wife got married in September 1964. Marilyn's father subsequently purchased 3 Kentucky Fried Chickens in Waterloo, Iowa.
Like he owned them?
He owned them.
Okay.
The couple moved there so Gacy could manage the restaurants, with the understanding that he would move into Marilyn's parents' former home. Gacy would receive $15,000 per year, equivalent to about $152,600 as of 2025. So
That's
$15,000 then was $152,600 today.
So he'd get that a year?
Yeah. Plus a share of the restaurant's profit. Gacy opened a club in his basement where his employees could drink alcohol and play pool. Although Gacy employed teenagers of both sexes, so male and female, he socialized only with the males. Gacy gave many of them alcohol before he made sexual advancements. If he rebuffed him, he would claim his advances were jokes or a test of morals.
So they were like, nah. He's like, I'm just joking.
Yeah, so when he'd go to touch them or go to whatever, and they'd be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what? He'd be like, oh, ha,
gotcha.
You passed the test.
You're good.
So he was kind of smart with it.
But what fucking test is that?
Making sure that they can protect themselves in his place of work.
In fucking KFC? Who's coming up and caressing you with KFC?
Obviously, we know it wasn't real.
I know.
But Gacy's wife gave birth to his son, in February of 1966 and a daughter in March of 1967, so about a year apart. Gacy later described this period of his life as perfect. He had finally earned his father's approval when Gacy's parents visited in July of 1966. His father privately apologized for the abuse he had inflicted before, happily saying, "Son, I was wrong about you." And he shook Gacy's hand.
Oh, like, so, like, to him, that was like,
To him, that was like, my father's finally proud of me. I have finally
he shook my
made
hand.
it
Okay.
in my father's life. I finally am viewed as something.
Mhm.
So in Waterloo, Gacy joined the local JC's chapter, regularly offering extended hours to the organization in addition to 12 and 14-hour days he had worked managing the restaurants. At a meeting, Gacy often provided fried chicken, and instead of being called call-in, he and other Waterloo JCs were also deeply involved in drug abuse, pornography, prostitution, and wife swapping. Although Gacy was considered
Wife swapping?
Mhm. Although Gacy was considered ambitious and bargart,
Ambitious and
braggart,
braggart. I don't know.
who the fuck knows?
Ambitious.
He was ambitious. And JC's held him high in regard for fundraising work. In 1967, he was named Outstanding Vice President of the Waterloo JCs and served on the board of directors.
Wait, so what were the JCs? They were just like
A group
a group of people.
of people who worked. So he would go from his extended hours of 12 to 14-hour days to go to these JC's meetings, and Gacy would also provide like dinner for them and bring obviously chicken, but they were involved with pornography, prostitution, drug abuse, and wife
okay, that's
swapping.
what that was. Okay, I see. Got it.
And I'm pretty sure wife swapping is a sexual activity in which both singles and partners would be in a committed relationship, sexually engaged with others.
So like a threesome?
It's like a swinging. It's a form of swinging. So they would basically trade wives.
Would all of them be together at one time, or just like, here's mine, I give yours, I'll get her back when it usually?
I think it's just they would engage. They
Like-
would switch wives, and he would have sex with another man's wife, and his wife would have sex with another man,
and then they just come back.
and then they would just come back.
Okay, got it. It's like an open relationship, but like not.
But you're married.
Yeah.
It's a married open relationship, but with a certain group of people.
Okay.
So this is sort of a longer one. Assault of Donald Voorhees. So in August of 1967, Gacy sexually assaulted a 15-year-old named Donald Voorhees Jr., the son of Donald Edwin Voorhees, a local politician and a fellow JC. Gacy lured Voorhees into his house with the promise of showing him heterosexual stag films.
Porn?
Regularly played at the JC's event. Mind you, he's 15 years old.
Yeah, let me see.
Gacy gave him alcohol and allowed him to watch the stag film and pursued to engage in mutual oral sex, adding
Whoa. With him?
with the 15-year-old
Oh, he
boy.
persuaded. Okay.
You have to have sex with a man before you start having sex with a woman. In Gacy's words. Over the following months, Gacy abused several other young youths, including one whom he encouraged to have sex with his own wife before blackmailing him to perform oral sex on him. Meaning, JC blackmailed a man to have sex with his wife and then made him give oral sex to Gacy. Gacy also tricked several teenagers into believing he was commissioned to conduct homosexual experiments for scientific research and paid them up to $50 each. So he'd basically prostitute these young men and would give them $50 and tell them it was for scientific research on homosexual experiments for research, and then he would pay them.
What's the research? What was he saying was the research?
It doesn't specify that. It honestly just says
He was just trying to give a reason.
Yeah, he was just giving a reason for young men to have sex with him.
Ew.
And I guess that worked with one, so it must work with many.
Well, yeah, when you offer a 15-year-old money, they don't really know what you're doing.
They don't care what it is. Money is money. On March 18th...
Well, especially from somebody who's a politician at where you live, like, known well.
You trust them.
Yeah.
You would trust them. Especially if most of them were in
he was
business with their mom or parents.
Yeah.
So, in March 1968, Voorhees told his father that Gacy had sexually assaulted him. Voorhees Sr. immediately informed the police, who arrested Gacy and charged him with performing oral sodomy on Voorhees and attempted assault of a 16-year-old Edward Lynch. Gacy denied the charges and demanded to take the polygraph test. The results of the test were indetective of deception, so undetectable.
They didn't detect him lying.
They couldn't tell if he was lying or telling the truth, basically. On August 30th, Gacy promised one of his employees, 18-year-old Russell Scronger or something, $300 if he physically assaulted Voorhees in an effort to discourage the boy from testifying in court.
So, he promised money if he would
beat the boy up into not going on the stand.
If he would beat the other boy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, Russell lured Voorhees to an isolated park, sprayed mace in his eyes, and then beat him. Voorhees escaped and reported Russell's actions to the police as well. And Russell was arrested the next day, initially denying involvement. He soon confessed to assaulting Voorhees, indicating he had done so at Gacy's request. Police arrested Gacy and charged him with hiring Russell as assault and intimidation of Voorhees. On September 12th, Gacy was ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation at the Psychiatric Hospital of the University of Iowa. 2 doctors concluded that he had antisocial personality disorder, the clinical term for sociopathy, and a psychopath.
But, like, having that does not justify you
murdering or anything.
Murdering or raping the kids.
Because just because you have a title on it doesn't, like, you're still crazy. He was unlikely to benefit from treatment, and that his behavior patterns was likely to bring him into repeated conflicts with society. The doctor concluded that Gacy was mentally compliant to stand to trial.
Oh, so he was okay. He could go to trial.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't, like, that bad.
On November 7th, 1968, Gacy pleaded guilty on 1 count of sodomy in relation to Voorhees, but not guilty to the charges of the related to the other youths. He claimed Voorhees had offered himself to him, and he had acted out of curiosity. His story was not believed. Gacy was convicted of sodomy on December 3rd and sentenced to 10 years in imprisonment to be served the Anamasa State Penitentiary. That same day, Gacy's wife petitioned for divorce. She had been awarded the couple's home and property, sole custody of their 2 children, and alimony.
Alimony. Doesn't that mean, like, money?
Yeah. It's part of his check, basically.
So, like the child support.
Yeah, the court ruled in her favor, and the divorce was finalized on September 18th, 1969. Gacy never saw his first wife or children ever again. During his incarceration, Gacy rapidly acquired a reputation as the model prisoner. Within months of his arrival, he had risen to the position of head cook, which in prison is, being a head cook is good because you control if people eat, you control, like, basically the kitchen, because you don't want to be mean to the head cook because you might not get dinner.
Oh.
He joined the JC chapter in the prison, which is the same place where they would do the wife swapping and the drugs and all that stuff.
And I went in jail?
Yeah. Bitch, it's like a
cult?
gang.
Oh, gang. Okay.
And increased its members from 50 to 650 men in less than 8 months.
Wait. There were 650 people in one prison?
Yeah, that's not
Like-
surprising.
No, but like one little section?
One gang.
No, but like in one little section of the jail there were 650 people. Or like the whole...
Prisons are big.
Really? They fit a lot of people in there?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Two people per bunk.
Per bunk?
Per room in prison. You and your bunkie.
Oh, yeah.
So there's 2 people, and there's probably thousands of rooms in a jail. Have you ever seen a jail?
No.
Oh, it's big. In a prison, it's like...
I've never gone. Like, I've seen it on TV, but they don't, like, show anything like...
that prisons are quite large. Gacy secured an increase in inmates' daily pay in prison mess hall, and supervised several projects to improve conditions for inmates, including the installation of a miniature golf course in a prison.
What are you doing? What?
He was presented with...
Let's go mini golfing, guys.
He was served an award for his efforts within the inmate JC's chapter.
How can you get an award in, like, oh my god, what?
To prepare for a second schedule of parole hearing in May 1970, he completed 16 high school courses, obtaining his diploma in November 1969.
Like, what does your
So
diploma say?
he graduated college before he graduated high school.
Okay, but, like, on your diploma, what's it say? Like, the prison?
No, graduated high school.
Yeah, but it
Online.
says where you graduated from.
It probably said whatever online course he took.
Oh, it was like okay. Are you sure it was online?
Or whatever teacher, I don't know.
There's no way it was online back then.
In 1970, you don't know what they got? They had to have computers back then.
But I don't think they had online school.
They had something
It's
because he
probably
graduated high
yeah.
school. In June of 1969, Gacy was denied parole and to prepare for a second scheduled parole hearing in 1970. On Christmas Day, 1969, Gacy's father died from cirrhosis.
Wait, what's parole? I hear that word all the time, but I don't understand.
You
what it
get
is.
out on parole.
Like,
you don't...
You're
you don't
out,
have
but
to,
like people like keep tabs on you at all times.
basically, you're under surveillance for a little bit.
Is that like when they wear an ankle monitor? No, or no?
That's house arrest. You're arrested just in your house.
It's like parole.
Parole, you have like a PO, your parole officer. I know people at my school have POs if they get caught with drugs on them in
Oh.
school, or they get caught with drugs, period. Give a PO. For them, they have to piss in a cup once a week. And if they get in
there's,
trouble,
like, certain things you have to do.
yeah, and it's basically the step before jail, or in this case, after
Okay.
jail. But if you do something while you're on parole, you get shoved back in with like
Like, it's easier.
yeah, it's easier to get into jail. Like a speeding ticket can get you back in jail if you're on parole.
If like, is house arrest like, house arrest is like, is it like, if it wasn't like as bad, or
No. Well, I mean, yeah, to a point. Like, some people who get into like altercations outside, like fights, like grown adults that get into fights, or they get charged with battery or something like that. Most of the time, they're on house arrest, to where it's not really bad enough for them to take up space in prison or in jail.
but they just don't want them to.
But they don't. They also
It's
don't want
like
them
a-
to just have nothing.
It's like a big timeout.
Basically, yeah. You just have a little ankle monitor. You're not allowed to like
Leave a
set foot in
certain
house.
area.
Like there was a girl in my school and she was on house arrest, and she had to take the same path to school every single day. And the one time the road was closed and she had to go around it, and it was slightly out of the range of where she had to follow. And she was arrested in school, and we went like on
They arrested her?
Yeah, we went on a hallway lock. So she got called out into the hallway, and then no one was allowed in the hallway, but because she got escorted out. And then she had to basically plead her case and look on the cameras and say, well, they were redoing the road. I had no other choice. I mean, she got back. Like, they're not, like, crazy like that. And I'm pretty sure it was the end of her sentence. So it was, like, really not that bad that they were fixing. Like, it wasn't her fault. They were fixing the road.
Yeah.
She had to step out of the range.
They just have to take
But they had to take her just in case she was trying to
do something else.
Because if they skip it for one person,
Yeah.
other
then,
people
like,
they have to do it for everybody.
Yeah.
After his father died, Gacy collapsed to the floor, sobbing. He
Okay.
basically asked to leave to attend the funeral, but he was denied.
He would have had to like.
So he would have had to.
talks with him.
He would have been able to leave the jail to go attend his father's funeral, but it was denied because cops would have to go with him, and he's psychotic. So they were like, no.
Like it seems like he's very manipulative too.
Mm-hmm. So Gacy was guaranteed parole with 12 months of probation.
What's the difference between that?
Not 100%. Probation in criminal law is a period of supervision over an offender ordered by the court, often after incarceration. Some jurisdictions, the term probation applies to community sentence. Now let's look at
So like parole and probation go together?
So parole is a form of early release from prison inmate where the prisoner agrees to abide by behavioral conditions, including check-in with their destination parole officer or PO, or else they may rearrested and return to prison.
Well,
exactly
isn't
what
probation
I said. So,
like what people go on when they like get a DUI? Like they go on probation, and they have to take like a class
mm-hmm.
to get their license back.
So parole is different than probation. Probation is a period of supervision over an offender ordered by the court.
So they just watch them?
They just basically are on high alert of them
okay.
for a long time. But parole is when they just have to go see their PO and like check in every couple.
Is it like the same thing of like when like somebody's out of rehab, they have to like check in with their
like you have to piss in a cup. Like if you go to jail for drug abuse, when you come out, you have a parole officer. You're let out on parole. So you still have to check in weekly with your parole officer. You still have to check in It's just easier to get back in prison. And probation is when you have a little bit more freedom. But you still are...
They still got their eyes on you.
You still have more security on you. So both, if you're a criminal, are good.
They're better than jail.
They're better than being in jail, but obviously you don't want to be on either. June 18th, 1970, having served 8 months of his 10-year sentence, conditions of his probation included a nightly curfew, and Gacy relocated to Chicago to live with his mother on his release. Gacy told his friends and fellow J.C. Clarence Lane, whom picked him up from prison, and had remained steadfast in his belief of Gacy's innocence. So he believed and stayed very loyal to Gacy through the whole thing and believed that he was completely innocent and did not deserve to be in jail whatsoever. That he would never, quote unquote, never go back to jail, and that he intended to reestablish himself in Waterloo. However, within 24 hours, Gacy had relocated to Chicago. He arrived there by bus on June 19th and shortly thereafter obtained a job as a short order cook. On February 12th, 1971, Gacy was charged with sexual assault on a teenage boy who claimed that he had lured him in to his car at Chicago Greyhound bus terminal and driven him to his home, where he had attempted to force the boy into sex. The court dismissed the complaint from the boy who failed to appear. On June 22nd...
Didn't he not appear because he was killed?
We're getting there. On June 22nd, Gacy's arrest and charged with aggravated assault, sexual battery, and reckless conduct in response of a complaint filled by a youth who claimed that Gacy had flashed a sheriff's badge and lured him into his car and forced him to perform oral sex. These charges were dropped after the complainant attempted to blackmail Gacy. The Iowa Board of Parole did not learn of these incidents. Gacy's parole ended on October 18th, 1971, and later the records of Gacy's criminal convictions in Iowa were sealed.
Oh, so like because he moved, they didn't have record of it.
They didn't really have record. They didn't really have record for him.
They didn't have the record of it.
They just didn't have the record of it from the last time.
So like, it's just not over.
It's basically a start over.
Wait, but I thought if you're on like parole or stuff, you can't move states.
It depends.
I mean, that's probably more now than it was before.
I'm sure this is one of the reasons why you can't do that now. With financial assistance from his mother, Gacy bought his ranch-style home in Norwood Park Township in Illinois. He lived there until his arrest on December 1978, and according to Gacy, committed all of his murders there. According to him. Gacy was active in his local community and helped towards his neighbors. He willingly loaded his construction tools and plowed snow from neighbors walking free of charge. From 1974 to 78, he hosted themed annual summer parties. These events were attended by up to 400 people, including politicians and business associates. On August 1974, 71, whoa, 74. Shortly after Gacy and his mother moved into the house, he became engaged in Carol Hoff, whom he had briefly dated in high school. Carol and her 2 young daughters from a previous marriage moved into the house soon after. They were married on July 1st, 1972. Gacy's mother moved out of the house shortly before the wedding. By 1975, Gacy told his wife that he had been bisexual. After the couple had sex on Mother's Day that year, he informed her that this would be the last time they would do so. He began spending most evenings away from home, only to return in the early morning with the excuse he had been working late or conducting business meetings. Carol observed Gacy been bringing teenage boys into the garage in the early hours and also gay pornography and men's wallets and identifications inside of the home. When she confronted Gacy about these items, he informed her angrily that this was none of her business. On October 1975, he had a heated argument with Carol and asked Gacy for divorce. He agreed, although the mutual consent, she continued to live in the house until February 1976. On March 2nd, Gacy divorced and decreed on the false grounds of Gacy identified infidelity with the woman.
Wait, so
was finalized.
They said that he was getting divorced because he was having an affair with other women when it
was with other men. Yes, it was just so that his business partners and the politicians that came to his party and all his higher ups didn't look down on him or frown upon him, because back then being gay or bisexual or liking boys was frowned upon.
This was like 50 years ago. Really? Wow.
In 1971, Gacy established a part-time construction business called PDM Contractors, painting, decorating, and maintenance. With the approval of his probation officer, Gacy worked evenings on his construction contracts while working as a cook during the day. Initially, he undertook minor repair work, but later expanded to including projects such as interior design, remodeling, landscaping. In the mid-1973, Gacy quit his job as a cook so that he could commit fully to his construction business. In 1975, PDM was expanded rapidly. Was expanding rapidly. Oh my god! Never mind. And Gacy was working up to 16 hours per day. In March 1977, he became a supervisor for PE Systems, a firm specializing in remodeling of drugstore. Oh, drugstore physical education. Between PE Systems and PDM,
does it ever say what PE is?
No. Because PDM is his business.
Yeah.
And then PE Systems is a different business.
Yeah.
So Gacy worked on up to 4 projects. By 1978, PDM's annual revenue was over $200,000. So in 1 year of owning PDM.
Back then? So wait. What does that mean now?
I don't
Give me your phone. I want to look it up.
So a little less than $1 million.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, in 2 years,
it went down.
It's embarrassing. So the clown. This is about his clownness. And how he was. Honk honk.
Oh, that's what it is. I couldn't make the right noise.
Throughout his membership in a local
Hi kids
club.
The Pink Pony Club.
He would have liked that.
No, that was for lesbians. That wasn't for gay men.
He would have loved it still.
No, he wouldn't. He
Gacy-
wanted nothing to do with pussies.
Oh yeah, that's true.
The Blue Pony Club.
I'm gonna keep on dancing at the Blue Pony Club. Gacy became aware of a Jolly Joker clown club, whose members regularly perform in fundraising events and parades, and additionally to volunteer entertaining hospitalized children.
I'm a jolly old clown.
Ew, ew, ew.
Jolly old
Ew,
Saint
ew,
Nicholas.
ew. In late 1975, Gacy joined the clown club and created his own character, Pogo the Clown. Gacy as the Pogo the Clown. So this was Pogo. Devising his own makeup and costume. He described Pogo as the happy clown, whereas Patches was more serious character. So Pogo was a little bit more like fun, upbeat. You want him more at like a child's party. Gacy earned money for his performances and later said that acting as a clown allowed him to regress in his childhood.
Acting as a clown allowed him to regress into his childhood?
Because he didn't have a very good childhood.
Oh, so he got to
have like a little childhood moment.
and like make somebody else happy?
I don't really know. He was psychotic, so you know. He performed as both Pogo and Patches in numerous local parties, politicians' functions, and charitable events, and even the Children's Hospital. Gacy voluntarily public service as a clown throughout the years of his murders led him to be known as the Killer Clown.
So wait, while he was killing people, he was also
He was also a clown for children's parties.
But like he wasn't killing them
As
in
the clown. So now we're getting into his employees. PDM's workplace consists of high school students and young men, which is what Gacy loved. Gacy would often proposition?
Yeah.
Oh, odd. His workers for sex. Or insist on sexual favors.
So he would like give them like, you do this or you have sex with me.
Basically.
Basically.
In return for lending his vehicles, financial assistance, or promotions, he claimed to own guns. Once telling an employee, do you know how easy it would be to get one of my guns and kill you? And how easy it would be to get rid of your body.
Oh. So fuck me.
Basically. In 1973, Gacy and a teenage employee traveled to Florida to view property Gacy had purchased.
Who is allowing their child to go to Florida by himself with his work boss? Like
It was
what?
for work. You wouldn't assume.
But like by himself, that's weird.
Well, times are different. Gacy raped the employee in the hotel room after returning to Chicago. This employee drove to Gacy's house and beat him in front of his yard. Gacy told his wife he had been attacked for refusing to pay him for poor quality painting work. May 1975, Gacy hired 15-year-old Anthony Antonucci. Antonucci.
I think Antonucci was
I think
Closer.
Antonucci was closer to what?
than anti-coochie.
2 months later, he went to Anti-Coochie's home.
Oh.
Anti-Coochie's home.
Anti-coochie.
I forget. What was the first one I said?
Antonucci.
Antonucci.
Yeah.
Knowing the youth has an injured foot, the two drank a bottle of wine and watched a heterosexual stag film. For Gacy wrestled Antonucci to the floor and cuffed his hands behind his back. One cuff was loose, and Antonucci freed his arm while Gacy was out of the room. When Gacy returned, Antonucci, a high school wrestler, grappled with him, like basically got into a fight with him, obtaining the key and cuffed Gacy's hands behind his back. And Gacy threatened Antonucci, then calmed down and promised to leave if he was Fred.
Freed.
Fred.
Freed.
Fred. Freed. Fred.
Freed. I'm gonna
Fred.
Fred you.
I'm good for
I will leave if you let me Fred.
Fred me right now! This fucking dumb bitch continued to work for PDM for 9 months after the incident, and Gacy made no further attempts to assault him.
What?
What? He worked for 9 months after that for Gacy.
He said.
I don't really feel like dying right
He
now.
said.
Gacy picked up 18-year-old hitchhiker David Crane and offered him a job with PDM. He began working the same evening on August 21st. What are you doing?
The hitchhiker's thumb?
Is it when they go backwards?
It's like,
Yeah.
I can't do it.
He then Cram moved into Gacy's home. The next day, Cram and Gacy had several
moved in?
drinks. Yep.
Oh, hitchhiker. Got it.
Hitchhiker, so he just stayed with him. Cram and Gacy had several drinks to celebrate his 19th birthday, with Gacy dressed as Pogo. Gacy conned Cram into doning. It's the same with these fuck-ass words. Wikipedia, fix your words.
Like putting handcuffs on?
It's putting handcuffs on his wrists and cuffed in the front of his body rather than behind. He swung Cram around while holding the chain linked to the cuff. You spin my head right round, right
You know how you
round.
like hold a kid and you swing him? Is that what he was doing?
No, he was holding it by the, like, so you're handcuffed like this, but the little chain in between each cuff, he was holding it and spinning in a circle.
But like a kid.
Yeah.
Like a kid, like his legs weren't on the ground. Okay.
He said he intended to rape him. Cram kicked Gacy in the face and fed him.
Wait.
And freed him.
So why would he swing him to then rape him? So he was dizzy?
I guess so. Maybe he ran out of drugs.
I'm gonna give you your own type of tripping.
I'm gonna make you dizzy. Then I'm gonna fuck you. And then by the time I finish, you won't be dizzy anymore.
So he must have finished fast.
Clearly. A month later, Gacy appeared in Cram's bedroom door. Oh my god, intending to rape him, saying, Dave, you really don't know who I am. Maybe it would be good if you give me what I want.
Ew, imagine just looking up from your bed
seeing
and
a
you
fat
see
old
that.
man like this in your window.
No, in
Hey.
his door.
Or in his door. Hey, you should give me what I want.
Stop.
Cram resisted, straddling?
Like he was like putting
straddling
him on top.
Gacy. He was putting,
like
he was on top of him.
but just like
Trying to kill him.
Well-
Who left the bedroom.
no, he was on top of Gacy because he was trying to stop him.
Yes.
Okay.
Who left the bedroom stating, you ain't no fun. Cram moved out on October 5th and left PDM, although he periodically worked for Gacy over the following 2 years. Shortly afterwards, the employee, 18-year-old Michael Rossi, moved in. Rossi had worked for PDM since May 23rd, 1976. He lived with Gacy until April 1977. Rossi sometimes assisted Gacy in clowning at the grand opening of the business. Gacy as Pogo and Rossi as Patches.
So he seemed to have gone after like newly
Newly
they weren't like
aged men.
underage, but they were like
Barely of age.
They were like fresh meat. Literally.
Gacy entered local Democratic Party politicians, initially offering use of his employees to clean party headquarters at no charge. He was rewarded with an invitation to serve on the Norwood Park Township Streetlight Committee and subsequently earning the title of
He was some captain.
Parket Captain.
Wasn't that what his dad was?
Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys, 26 of whom he had buried in his crawl space of his house, and his victims included people who knew and random individuals lured from Chicago's Greyhound bus station, Bughouse Square, or off the streets with a promise of a job with BDM. An offer of drinks or drugs or money for sex. Some victims were grabbed by force. Others were conned into believing Gacy, who often carried a sheriff's badge and had red spotlights on his black Oldsmobile. He had red lights on his car, so
And a
he looked
badge.
like, and a badge.
To make it look like he was a policeman.
Like
Got
an
it.
undercover cop or
Got
something. Gacy usually lured a lone victim to his house, although on more than one occasion, Gacy had went 2 kills in the same evening. So that's why he racked up 30. The way he would get to the killing
Wait, where was it say that? Yeah,
was
his usually
to-
way of like getting them to
yeah.
do it.
was by drinks, drugs, or genuinely just gain their trust.
To
which
the
is
kids or younger.
to the
men.
youth. They're described in here as the youth. He would then produce a pair of handcuffs to show a magic trick, sometimes as a part of his clowning routine. He typically cuffed his own hands behind his back, then superbly released himself with a hidden key. He had then offered to show the intended victim the trick. With the victim's restraints, Gacy proceeded with the rape and torture. He frequently began by straddling the victim's chest before forcing the victim to fillet him.
Is that like giving head?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Like, give me fellatio right now. Gacy then inflicted acts of torture, including burning with cigars, making his captive imitate a horse. He sat on their backs and pulled a makeshift rein around their neck.
What?
In violation with the foreign object, such as dildos and prescription bottles, after he had sodomized the captive.
Whoa, wait. He put prescription bottles in their butt.
Pill bottles in their butthole. Gacy frequently manicured his captives'
Like
ankles 2x4
he like
with
tied 'em?
handcuffs. So I think he would attach their wrists to their ankles.
no.
Come here, Blake.
He would tie their ankles to the 2x4 with handcuffs. Bubba,
Sit down.
come here.
By Houston mass murders.
I was inspired by them.
Yep. He also taunted many victims throughout their
Na,
abuse.
na, 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 na.
And he was known to have parties drown
Ow, why you mad
several
again?
in the bathtub before repeatedly
Partly drown them.
partly drown them by repeatedly
Before
repeatedly reviving them.
I'm sorry about making jokes. I promise it's not funny, but also, what else am I supposed to say? We're not trying to
We're not trying to make
rude
fun.
or make fun. It's just, yeah.
Gacy typically murdered his victims by placing a rope or tourniquet around their neck and progressively tightening it with a hammer handle, like what happened to Jean Bonnet. He referred to this as his rope trick, frequently informing his victims that this was the last trick. Occasionally, the victims convulse for an hour or two before dying. Although several victims die of the the suffocation from cloth gag stuffed deep
No,
in
that's
their throat.
choking.
It does start with an A.
Yeah.
Aspiration.
Asphyxiation.
Asphyxiation.
It means you're choking.
It means to gag. Except for his two final victims, where they murdered between 3 and 6 a.m. Gacy usually stored the victim's corpse under his bed for up to 24 hours before burying them in the crawl space, where he periodically poured quick lime to hasten the decomposition.
So, like, it was like a chemical that just...
Some were taken into his garage and ambled prior to the burial.
like, cut apart.
Yeah, basically played with, cut apart. Gacy's
Finagled.
first known murder occurred on January 3rd, 1972, according to Gacy later account following a family party. The previous evening, he drove to the Civic Center in the Loop in early morning to view the display of ice sculpture. He then lured 16-year-old Timothy Jack. So this is about the murder of Timothy McCoy. Timothy Jack McCoy, who this is about, from Chicago's Greyhound bus terminal into his car. McCoy was on his way to his father's home in Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, that's where JoJo C was from.
Omaha, yes. And informed Gacy his bus was not due until noon. Gacy took McCoy on a sightseeing tour of Chicago and then drove him to his home with promise that he could spend the remainder of the night and be driven back to the station in time to catch the bus. Prior to McCoy's identification, he was known as the Greyhound bus boy. So Gacy claimed he woke up early the following morning to find McCoy standing in his bedroom doorway holding a kitchen knife. So this is Gacy saying McCoy was trying to kill him. He jumped from his bed and McCoy raised both arms in a gesture of surrender and accidentally cutting Gacy's forearm. Gacy disarmed McCoy, banged his head against the wall, and kicked him against his wardrobe. McCoy kicked Gacy in the stomach, doubling him over, and Gacy then grabbed McCoy, wrestling him to the floor, and stabbed him repeatedly in the chest. As McCoy lay dying, Gacy claimed that he washed the knife in his bathroom and went to the kitchen and saw the making of breakfast on the table. McCoy had set the table for two.
Oh,
He had walked into Gacy's room to wake him while absent-mindedly carrying the knife.
He wasn't going to kill him. He was just making breakfast. Oh.
Yep, Gacy buried McCoy in his crawl space and later covered his grave with a layer of concrete. In the interview several years later, after his arrest, Gacy said immediately after killing McCoy, he felt totally drained, yet noted that he stabbed McCoy and listened to the gargulations and gasping. He had experienced a mind-numbing orgasm.
Ew.
He added,
Ew.
"That's when I realized that death was the ultimate thrill." His second murder. Gacy said he committed the murder of the second time on January 1974. This victim remains unidentified. He was strangled and placed in Gacy's closet before burial. Gacy later stated that the bodily fluid leaked from the victim's mouth and nose, staining his carpet. Gacy regularly stuffed rags in the victim's own underwear or sock into the mouth subsequent victims to prevent such a leakage. On July 31st, John Bukovich, an 18-year-old PDM employee, disappeared. Bukovich's car was later found abandoned with his jacket and wallet inside and keys in the ignition. The day before his disappearance, Bukovich had confronted Gacy over outstanding back pay. Bukovich's father called Gacy, who claimed he was happy to help search for his son, but sorry Bukovich had run away. When questioned by the police, Gacy said Bukovich had two friends had arrived at his house demanding the overdue pay and had reached the compromise, and all three had left. Over the following 3 years, Bukovich's parents called police more than 100 times, urging them to investigate Gacy further. Gacy later admitted to encountering Bukovich exiting the car waving to attract his attention. According to Gacy, Bukovich approached him, stating, "I want to talk to you." Gacy invited Bukovich into his car and invited him back to his home, upstandardly to settle the issue of his overdue wages. At this home, Gacy offered Bukovich a drink, then conned him into allowing his wrists to be cuffed behind his back. Gacy then confessed to have sat on the kid's chest for a while before he strangled him. He stowed Bukovich's body in the garage, intended to bury the body later in the crawl space. When his wife and stepdaughters returned home early than expected, Gacy buried Bukovich under the concrete floor of the tool room extension of his garage with an empty space where he had intended to dig a drain tile. So at the time of that murder, his wife and stepkids came home and he was like, fuck, I gotta put him somewhere. In addition to being the year his business expanded, Gacy freely admitted in 1975 was also when he began to increase the frequency of excursions for sex on young males. He often referred to these jaunts as cruising.
Ew.
Gacy committed most of his murders between 1976 and 1978. He largely lived alone following his divorce. Although Gacy remained gregarious and civic-minded, several neighbors noticed behavioral changes after his 1976 divorce, including seeing him keeping company with young males, hearing his car arrive or depart in early morning, or seeing lights in his home switch on and off in the early hours. One neighbor later recollected that for several years, muffled high-pitched screams, shoutings, and crying had repeatedly awakened her and her son in the early morning. Basically just saying that it was
Coming
from a house that was besides her. In 1976, 1 month after his divorce was finalized, Gacy abducted and murdered 18-year-old Daryl Sampson. He was last seen alive in Chicago on April 6, 1976. 1976, Gacy buried him under the dining room with cloth lodged in his throat. On May 14th, 15-year-old Randall Ruffett. 15-year-old Randall Ruffett disappeared shortly after returning home from a dental appointment, and then he killed a 14-year-old Samuel Stapleton, who vanished walking home from his sister's apartment.
Friends.
They were friends. They were buried together in the crawl space. On June 3rd, Gacy killed 17-year-old Michael Bonin. 10 days later, Gacy murdered 16-year-old William Carroll and buried them in the crawl space. Between June 13th and August 6th, Carroll seemed to be the first of 4 victims. On August 5th, 16-year-old James Hakinson was the last known to have phoned his family, possibly from Gacy's home. Hawkinson died of suffocation. His body was buried in the crawl space beneath 17-year-old Rick Johnson, who was last seen alive on August 6th.
Damn, so he like went hard.
He was going deep. Gacy thought to have murdered 2 unidentified males between August and October 1976. On October 24th, Gacy abducted and killed teenage friends Keith and Parker and Michael Marino. These 2 were last seen on Clark Street in Chicago. 2 days later, 19-year-old construction worker William Bundy
Ted Bundy?
disappeared after informing his family that he was attended a party. Bundy died of suffocation. Gacy buried the bodies beneath the master bedroom. Between November and December 1976, Gacy murdered 22-year-old Francis Alexander. His last contact with his family was a phone call from his mother sometime in November. He was not reportedly missing by his family, believed he had moved to California shortly after. Alexander was buried beneath the room Gacy used as his office. In December 1976, 17-year-old Georgie Godzik disappeared. His girlfriend last saw him outside her house. Godzik worked for PDM for less than 3 weeks when he disappeared. He had informed his family that Gacy had taken him dig trenches for some kind of drain tiles.
Oh my god, so he was having them
in his
dig
crawl space
things for them.
to be buried. They were basically digging their own grave. And his parents and older sister contacted Gacy about Godzik's disappearance. So in 1977, Gary lured 19-year-old John Sinzik to his house and he confessed to strangling him in his spare bedroom. Russ was asleep in the house of the following morning. Gacy murdered an intentionally unidentified youth and buried him in the crawl space in the spring of early 1977. On July 5th, Gacy killed 19-year-old Matthew Bowman. Bowman's mother last saw him in the suburban train station. He intended to travel to his Horwood Heights for a court appointment. The following months, Rozzi was arrested for stealing gasoline while driving Zink's car. The gas station attendant noticed the license plate and the police traced the car to Gacy's house. When questioned, Gacy told the officer that Zink had sold the car to him in February, saying he needed money to leave town. A check in the VIN confirmed the car belonged to Zink. Gacy had murdered 6 more young men between the ages of 16 and 21. The first of these was 18-year-old Robert Gilroy, and son of Chicago police sergeant, last seen alive on September 15th. He was buried under the crawl space. On September 12th, Gacy had flown to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to supervise and remodeling projects and did not return to Chicago until September 16th. So he left September 12th and returned 4 days later on the 16th. On October 17th, 21-year-old Russell Nelson disappeared. He was last seen outside Chicago bar. Nelson was looked for contracting work. Gacy murdered and buried him beneath the guest bedroom. Less than 4 weeks later, Gacy murdered 16-year-old Robert Winch.
Holy shit.
And buried him in the crawl space. On December 9th, 19-year-old U.S. Marine David disappeared after telling his mother he was going to attend a rock concert. Gacy strangled him and buried him under the crawl space. There's years of this.
Like that's
So there was a bunch more.
there's so many.
There was 33 victims.
Oh wait, he admitted to having slave sex.
Yeah, so on December 30th, Gacy abducted 19-year-old college student Robert Donnelly from the Chicago bus stop at gunpoint. Gacy drove him to his home and raped, tortured, and repeatedly drowned Donnelly to unconsciousness in the bathtub, and he made statements such as, "Aren't we playing fun games tonight?" Donnelly later
he
testified at the trial that he was in such pain he asked Gacy to kill him. Gacy replied, "I'm getting round to it." After several hours, Gacy drove Donnelly to his workplace and released him, warning him that if he complained to the police, they would not believe him.
Wow.
In 1970, Donnelly reported the assault to the police. So about a year later, give or take. On January 6, 1978, Gacy admitted to having a slave sex relationship with Dolly, insisted everything was consensual, adding that he didn't even pay the kid the money that he had promised. The police believed him and filed no charges. The following month, Gacy killed 19-year-old William Kinder, who disappeared on February 16th after telling his fiancee, who knew Gacy, that he was going to the bar. On March 21st, Gacy lured 26-year-old Jeffrey Rignall into his car. Gacy chloroformed him
Holy
and
shit.
drove him to his house, where his arms and head were restrained in a pillory device affixed to the ceiling, and his feet were locked into another device. He raped and tortured him with
my God.
instruments including lit candle, and whooped and repeatedly chloroformed him into unconsciousness. Gacy then dumped Reginald in Chicago's Lincoln Park, unconscious but alive. Reginald managed to stagger to his girlfriend's apartment. Police were informed of the assault but did not investigate Gacy. Reginald was able to recall this Oldsmobile in Kennedy Expressway and particular side of the street. He and two friends staked out the Cumberland exit of the expressway, one of the exits in expressway.
Yeah.
And in April, Reginald saw the Oldsmobile, which he and his friends followed to Gacy's house. Gacy was arrested in July 15th. He faced trial for assault and battery against...
Assault and battery?
Yeah. By mid-1978, the crawl space had no more room for further bodies. Gacy later confessed to the police that he considered storing the bodies in his attic, but had been worried about the leakage from their bodies. Therefore, he had chosen to dispose of his victims off the I-55 bridge in the Des Plaines River. Gacy stated that he had thrown 5 bodies into the river in 1976, which he had believed had landed on a passing barge. Only 4 were ever found. On one afternoon, December 11th, 1978, Gacy visited the Nielsen Pharmacy in Des Plaines to discuss a potential remodeling deal with the store owner, Phil Torf. While he was there...
Oh, this is the one I was talking about.
While he was within earshot of 15-year-old part-time employee, Robert Pest. Gacy mentioned that his firm often hired teenage boys starting at wage of $5 per hour. Most doubled in pay. Pest earned at the pharmacy, so he earned about $2 at the pharmacy. Shortly after Gacy left, Pest's mother arrived at the store to drive her son home so the family could celebrate her birthday together. Pest asked his mother to wait, adding that some contractor wants to talk to me about a job. He left the store at 9 p.m., promising to return shortly. Pest was murdered shortly after 10 p.m. at Gacy's home. Gacy later stated that at his house he gave Pest a soft drink before asking if there was anything he wouldn't do for the right price, which Pest replied that he did not mind working as hard. In response, Gacy stated good money could be earned hustling, although Pest was dismissive. And then he was put in the handcuffs and done his normal. And then Gacy admitted to having received a phone call from the business while Pest was dying. While Pest failed to return to his family filed a missing persons report to the Des Plaines police. Torf named Gacy as the contractor. Pest had most likely left the store talking to Lieutenant Joseph Konzak.
Lieutenant.
Lieutenant. I like that better. Lieutenant. That was a nice word.
You need a lieutenant? I'm the new lieutenant.
Stop. Whose son attended Maine West High School, like Pest, chose to investigate Gacy further. A check of Gacy's criminal background revealed that he had an outstanding battery charge in Chicago and had been imprisoned in Iowa for the sodomy of a 15-year-old boy. Kozakanak and 2 Des Plaines police officers visited Gacy at his home the following evening. Gacy indicated that he had asked one of the youths working at the pharmacy, whom he believed to be Pest, whether there were any remodeling materials behind the store. He was adamant, however, that he had not offered Pest a job, and that he only returned to the pharmacy shortly after 8 p.m. As he left his appointment book, Gacy promised to come to the station later and that evening to make a statement, indicating that he was unable to do it that moment as his uncle had just died. When questioned as to how soon he could come to the police station, he responded, "You guys are very rude. Don't you have any respect for the dead?"
Coming from you is funny.
I know, that's why it was funny. At 3:20 a.m., Gacy arrived at the police station covered in mud, claiming that he had been involved in a car accident. On the returning to the police station later that day, Gacy denied any involvement in Pest's disappearance, and repeatedly he had not offered any job. So the mud that he was wearing was from burying his body. So Gacy's first search warrant, suspecting Gacy might be holding Pest at his home, Des Plaines police obtained a search warrant on December 13th. This search revealed several suspicious items, including several police badges, and a starting pistol, a syringe, and a hypodermic needle, handcuffs, books about homosexual and pederasty.
Pederasty?
I'm a sure pedo, like child, something. I don't know.
I don't know.
Pornography and stag films, capsules of amyl nitrate.
It's a chemical.
A dildo, a 2x4 with 2 holes drilled in each end, bottles of Valium and Astropine, several driver's license, a blue hooded parka. No idea what that is.
And underwear too small.
And underwear too small to fit Gacy. They also found a class ring engraved with the initials JAS and a Nielsen Pharmacy photo receipt in the trash along a 36-inch section of nylon rope.
Yeah.
So they followed him everywhere he went, and he started figuring it out. So he started flying, swerving in between lanes, driving recklessly, but they obviously didn't want to pull him over because then the cop car would have to pull over, and then if the cops pulled him over, then he would obviously be more known that he's being followed. So he would basically play games on them. I'm pretty sure he even called them and told them that they would never catch him, and basically ran from the police because he knew he was being followed, and they just ended up continuing following him. It really didn't do anything. He didn't really have a lot to do with it. They were trying to catch him doing something, but you can't really catch somebody who knows that you're watching them. So this is about his second search warrant. This time he was more cooperative. He informed detectives that in summer of 1977 at Gacy's B heist, he had spread 10 bags of lime in a crawl space of Gacy's house. On December 19th, investigators began compiling evidence for a second search warrant of Gacy's home.
Wasn't the first one like they couldn't go in the basement?
Because they didn't have it. No, they found the crawl space, but they couldn't go in it because there wasn't a warrant for the crawl space.
It was just for in the house.
The first search warrant wasn't as in depth as this one was.
It was just like walk around.
It was your basic like walkthrough is what they're called. Like it was a walkthrough of his house.
Yeah. Okay.
Gacy invited the surveillance detectives inside his house again. While flushing Gacy's toilet, the officer noticed a rancid smell he suspected could be the rotting corpse emanating from the heating duct.
So like they
like basically radiating off the heating ducts.
Yeah.
It was so like stinky. The officers who had searched Gacy's house previously had failed to notice this, as the house had been chilly.
Oh yeah, because when they get tired, you're gonna smell it. You ain't gonna smell nothing when it's cold.
Investigators interviewed both Cram and Rosie on December 20th. That was insane.
Holy crap.
Rossi replied Gacy may have placed the bodies in the crawl space. Rossi agreed to submit to a polygraph test. He denied any involvement in Pest's disappearance or any...
Wait, who's Rossi?
Another one, I believe, that got taken.
Okay.
I want to say.
Okay.
He refused to continue questioning as Rossi...
Erratic and inconsistent.
So,
like crazy, and it wasn't like the same.
And every time it was a different story.
Yeah.
Cam informed an investigator that Gacy had attempts to rape him in 1976. He stated that he and Gacy had returned home after the December 13th search. Gacy had turned pale after seeing clod of mud on his carpet and had immediately entered the crawl space to look for evidence of digging. When asked whether he had been in the crawl space, Cram replied he had once been asked by Gacy to spread lime down there and had also dug trenches. When Gacy explained that they were drainage pipes, Cram stated these trenches were 2 feet wide, 2 feet, 6 feet long, 2 feet deep, the size of the grave. The evening of December 20th, Gacy drove to his lawyer's office in Park Ridge to attend a scheduled meeting to discuss the progress of his civil suit. Gacy appeared anxious and disheveled and immediately asked for an alcoholic drink.
Wait, they let them drink at a police station?
Mm-hmm.
Do they just kind of do whatever to try to get them to talk?
I'm sure that was
Yeah.
part of the reason, or it was just you
I
were
don't
allowed
know.
to drink. So Gacy immediately drank 2 cupfuls of whiskey. Gacy claims of innocence, then asked what he had discussed with them, playing a copy of the Daily Herald on his desk, stating, "You said you had something new to tell me, something important." Gacy picked up the newspaper, pointed at the front page of the article covering the disappearance of Pest, and said, "This boy is dead. He's dead. He's in the river."
So he kind of cracked.
So he basically admitted that he knows that he's dead and he's in the river. Gacy then proceeded to give a rambling confession that ran into the early hours of the following morning. He began by stating he had been judge, jury, and executioner of many people.
Whoa. So
To
he
be
did that to
judged,
all of them.
yeah,
So he
so
was like, it's my turn.
And he said that he was the judge and execution of many, many people. He stated that he had murdered at least 30 victims, most of whom he had buried in the crawl space, and disposed of 5 other bodies in the Des Plaines River. Gacy dismissed his victims as male prostitutes, hustlers, and liars, adding he sometimes awoke to find dead, strangled kids. As a result of the alcohol he has consumed, Gacy fell asleep midway through his confession.
Oh.
Amoret immediately arranged for the psychiatric appointment for Gacy that morning. On awaking several hours later, Gacy shook his head and informed by Amoret that he had confessed to killing approximately 30 people, saying, "Well, I can't think about this right now. I've got to do things," ignoring his lawyer's advice regarding his scheduled appointment. Gacy left to attend his business. Gacy later recollected his memories of his final day of freedom as being hazy, adding he knew his arrest was inevitable and that he had intended to visit his friends, saying his farewells. After leaving his lawyer's office, Gacy drove to the gas station where he had handed a small bag of cannabis to the attendant, who immediately handed the bag to the surveillance officer, adding, "Gacy had told him, the ending is coming for me. These guys are going to kill me." Gacy then drove to the home of the fellow contractor, a friend, Ronald Rode. Gacy hugged Rode before bursting into tears, saying, "I've been a bad boy. I killed 30 people. I give
Give or take.
or take a few.
I've been a bad boy.
I've been a bad boy. I killed almost 30 people. Give or take a few. Don't get it right."
I've been a bad boy.
I know, like, that's so unneeded. Gacy left Rode and drove to Cram's home to meet with Cram and Rossi. The surveillance officer noticed he was holding a rosary to his chin, praying while they drove along the expressway. He was talking to Cram and Rossi. Gacy had Cram drive him to the scheduled legal meeting. Cram informed the surveillance officer that Gacy had told him and Rossi that he had confessed to over 30 murders with his lawyer the previous evening. Gacy then had Cram drive him to the Mill Hill Cemetery, where his father was buried. As Gacy drove to the various locations that morning, police outlined the formal draft of the second search warrant, specifically to the piteous body in the crawl space. Here it is. On the hearing of the surveillance detected that in the light of this erratic behavior, Gacy might be about to commit suicide. Police decided to arrest him on the charge of possession and distribution of cannabis in order to hold him in custody as the formal request for the second search warrant presented. At 4:30 p.m. on December 21st, the eve of hearing... Oh, that's like really close to Christmas. The eve of hearing that Gacy's civil suit, A second search warrant was granted. The police informed Gacy that his intentions to search the crawl space for the body of Pest. Gacy denied that the teenager was buried there, but confessed to have killed in self-defense a young man whose body was buried under his garage. Armed with signed search warrant, police and evidence technicians drove to Gacy's home. They found that Gacy's unplugged sump pump flooding the crawl space with water. They replaced the plug and waited for the water to drain. Evidence technician Daniel entered the 28 by 38 foot crawl space, crawled into the southwest area, and began digging. Within minutes, he uncovered a human arm bone, gently shouted to the investigators that they could charge Gacy with murder, adding, "I think this place is full of kids." A police photographer uncovered the patella in the north corner. The two then began digging in the southwest corner, uncovering 2 lower leg bones. The victims were too decomposed to be Pest, as the body in the north corner was unearthed as a crime scene technician discovered the skull of the second victim alongside this body. So this is when it bubbled up.
This is when like more things were.
More things were coming to the surface. They were
finding more
digging, and
things.
the arrest. The police found human body remains in the crawl space that would now face murder charges. Gacy told the police that he wanted to clear the air in the morning of December 22nd. In the presence of his lawyer, Gacy provided a formal statement in which confessing to the murders. He knew that he was getting arrested. Trial. He went to trial.
Arrested.
He got arrested. He admitted to it. He pleaded guilty. They gave him the death sentence on May 9th, 1994. Gacy.
Damn, that wasn't that. Whoa, wait. So they waited 20 years.
Well, it's kind of hard getting executed. If I got scheduled for death row now, I wouldn't probably get executed till 2050.
Why?
Because the list.
Oh, got it.
People die most of the time in jail before they even get to execution.
Mm-hmm.
On the morning of May 9th, Gacy was transferred to the Stateville Correctional Center to be executed. That afternoon, he was allowed a private picnic on the prison grounds with his family. For his last meal, Gacy ordered a bucket of KFC. This is crazy. A bucket of KFC, French fries, a dozen fried shrimp, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke. That evening, he had received the last rites from a Catholic priest before being escorted to the Stateville execution chamber. In the hours leading up to Gacy's execution, a crowd estimate over 1,000 gathered outside the correctional center. A vocal majority were in favor of the execution. A small number of anti-death penalty protesters were present. Some of those in favor of the execution wore T-shirts saying, "No tears for the clown." At 12:40 a.m., the procedure to administer the lethal injection began. Although the chemicals used in the execution solidified unexpectedly, clogging the IV tube. The execution replaced the clogged tube and extension resumed. Oh my god, the execution resumed. The entire procedure took 18 minutes. The anesthesiologist blamed the problem on the prison official inexperience.
The mistake, they didn't change how they were doing the lethal injection.
Putting
He got anesthesia.
The anesthesiologist.
He does not deserve anesthesia. He doesn't deserve it. Like this, he said he got a much easier death than any of his victims. Yeah, I think he should have to feel everything.
Because it's very painful getting the lethal injection. You
Good.
feel every single organ shutting down.
And he should.
You feel your arms breaking and like shutting down. You feel your brain slowly stop.
And he should.
He should have.
He shouldn't have to be asleep and it just stopped.
No, honestly, oh my god, I saw a TikTok that
or maybe it's just anesthesia that paralyzes him.
Probably.
Instead of making him sleep, like he just can't move.
Yeah, probably. I saw a TikTok that was like, if the death penalty is still allowed, I think if you want the death penalty and you're a murderer, you should be murdered the same way you murdered them.
Yeah.
And that's payback. But
an eye for an eye. So yeah, what a nice man he was.
Make him president. Because clearly we can have anybody be
our
president.
All right.
So.
All right. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed.
You can find us on Spotify or anywhere you get your podcast.
Today we were the judges.
And you just got served.
Why is it so cold down here?